sprint courses. They call them part of term, non-standard, express term, all different terms for accelerated online courses. And one of the things we wanted to talk about today is how to strategically incorporate accelerated online courses into your programs. How do you do that and make it effective for students, faculty, and the administration? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And Dan Feinberg is going to moderate, and the panelists will be introducing themselves. So thank you for taking a moment to complete the poll, and we'll go from there.
Great. Thanks very much, Maureen. And welcome back, everybody. While you're continuing to vote on the Mentimeter, I thought we could just do some quick introductions. Maybe Michelle, to my left, you can kick us off.
Hey everyone, I'm Michelle Fort. I'm an associate professor in human services at SUNY Empire.
I'm Lisa Malhusky. I'm the director of online learning at Fredonia.
I'm Brianna Garland, and I am an online support coach at Fredonia. So my job is half student support for our online programs, which are all graduate programs as well. And the other half of my position is instructional design.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Howard. I'm online academic advisor for Alfred State College, and I'm a general advisor, but I also primarily advise a lot of students who take accelerated courses.
And I'm Danielle O'Brien, the Director of Extended Learning, Innovation, and Teaching Excellence, also at Alfred State. And then we have our student who has joined our panel. I think Kurt is online. You all met him before lunch too. So, and Kurt, I don't know if you want to just introduce yourself real quick and tell everyone that you just got off work at 6 a.m., right? And still came to join us today. A little bit about your program. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me back as the second panel I'm participating with. I do have a very packed schedule as a working adult. I am currently enrolled in healthcare management advanced courses with Alfred State, and actually Jeremy is my advisor. I have engaged him on several occasions regarding the course and its makeup and its outline and how it fits my schedule. So I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you very much, Kurt. So I'm going to jump in. I appreciate people taking the time to fill out the Mentimeter. It looked like the number one topic that we wanted to address, not surprising because of who we have here, but is course design, right, is where we'll start, which is great. So I guess my question is for everybody to start, right? But what are some of the key principles to consider when designing an accelerated course? I don't know who wants to start. Michelle, I know you teach in that modality.
I mean, obviously we're always designing backwards, right? From learning outcomes and putting information in. But I think at Empire, our accelerated courses are 8 weeks versus 15. We call them express courses. And I think the key in the courses I've taught is ensuring that we're not overloading the courses. So sometimes we worry in the 15-week courses that we're not getting enough content in. We have to overly assess, right? And interestingly, when we take the 15-week courses and we pare them down to 8 weeks, we see where there's redundancy. We see where there's unnecessary learning activities, and I'm putting unnecessary in quotes, right? And so I think that's a piece of it, right? Just making sure that it's not overly assessed and the pace and the content are appropriate for student success within that very short time frame.
So at Fredonia, we realized just now we don't have a name for ours. We just list them as 7 weeks, and the students all figure it out. So isn't that great? They are all graduate level courses. So we are not doing this at an undergraduate level. And so that is a difference between what we're designing. And the graduate students really appreciate it because it lets them take that deeper dive. So when we look at these courses and design them, we really design them around the idea that is going to allow a deeper dive into a particular topic instead of spreading it out amongst multiple courses at the same time. So that is really the big piece for us, is allowing that length of time to really get a full understanding of something.
Yes, agree with that. And I think one of the things when we have our meetings and we kind of have our kickoff calls with faculty is that we try to get away from the common conception that we're taking a 15-week course and making it 7, right? That's not what we're trying to do as instructional designers and as folks who are designing or redesigning courses. So some of my favorite faculty to work with are ones that haven't taught it in a 15-week format because they don't have necessarily that rhythm that they've established. But for folks who have taught it, which is most of the time, right? Usually they've taught it in a 15-week format, and now we're trying to rework it. It's really starting to ask those questions about where are those redundancies and how can we really make sure that alignment becomes a key to that backwards design process, right? We really look at those outcomes. What are we trying to get students to learn? What do those assessments look like? And then what kind of content do they need to be successful in the courses? And I mean, that's the ideal, right? Not every single course and every single faculty member goes through that process with us. But really, when we're talking about design, that's what we're trying to get faculty thinking more about. The principles in the course as a whole, rather than taking 15 weeks and squishing it into 7.
So on top of that, we also have to put this in the context of online learners who, as we know, need flexibility, are working full time, have children, have so many outside of school responsibilities. And so I think one of the mistakes that some faculty members might make with trying to just directly port a 15-week to a 7 or 8 week is that they'll use midweek deadlines to kind of fit more of that content in there. And almost every single student I talk to who has classes that are structured like that talks about how extremely difficult those midweek deadlines are, especially if they're working full-time plus whatever else they're doing. So even if they're doing a lot of work on the weekends, that's the time that they have to do a lot of work. And so that's the best time to allow them to do it. Yeah.
Really interesting. So you're trying to sort of, you know, thread the needle between being comprehensive at the same time as being manageable. And that's not always super easy to do. I'm going to pick on Kurt for a second, if that's all right. Kurt, we've talked about, you know, from the faculty perspective, how to design the course. What are some course design features you see that help you manage the course content?
Well, the first thing I'd start off with my experience with the accelerated coursework at Alfred, is really the evaluation of whether I can handle the material or not. They did a pretty good job of reaching out to me and understanding what my background was. So I do have some history with inside healthcare. So I did have a baseline of information and knowledge to join the class and the courses and the degree program, which was helpful. From the design of the course, I do appreciate the modular design that Alfred provides me. So it chunks up the materials for the course in these very manageable segments, and each segment has certain reading allotments and assignments to it, which very much helps me to plan out my sessions, how I do my work, and how I plan to get my assignments completed. I do have a challenge with sometimes, as Jeremy mentioned, the flex on deadlines and how assignments are due. For example, if there's a module that opens up on a Sunday and we have assignments due by Wednesday, that becomes very challenging for people with schedules like mine. So I tend to do a lot of my work at night. Jeremy may see an email from me at 12 or 1 o'clock, just because that's the way my schedule works. So a little bit of increased flexibility on deadlines would be appreciated. But other than that, the design of the courses that I've had so far at Alfred have been fantastic. I really don't have too much to complain about, because the syllabus from each of the course from all the instructors clearly outlines expectations. And, you know, if you don't meet those expectations, they clearly state right exactly in there. If there's a point loss, there's a deduction. So requirements, deadlines, and expectations for the courses are laid out pretty well. I really don't have any recommendations from a development standpoint in the courses that I've taken so far.
Dan, we have 2 questions from online.
Great.
I have one for Lisa, I believe. Hold on, I'm scrolling. Do you limit the number of courses that the students are able to take at a time? Like one?
So, and some of that has to do with the way the program's developed, right? So our first accelerated program was an ed leadership program, and they were a new cohort, and we have tried to keep them in cohorts together. Although I will say that's the other thing 7 weeks does. It lets them step off for a little bit and come back really easily. So typically they are only taking one at a time. I believe the individual who advises that program would, in a special case, let someone take 2 7-week classes that were running in the same 7 weeks. But mostly we discourage that because it is a lot into the 7 weeks, right? So it's taking, part of the reason we did it was to not overlap the 15 weeks so you could stay focused on one class. Now we've kind of put the material into a much closer return rate, and now you're trying to do 2 at the time. So I do think they would discourage it. I do want to say too, one more thing about the due dates. We had a faculty member who initially designed it with no due dates, just that everything was due at the end of the 7 weeks, because he did want to give that really increased flexibility. And that also didn't work because people need just a little more motivation than this is all due at the end. And it really hindered the conversation between the students, not having some actual due dates to kind of guide students through.
Okay, speaking of due dates, the second question is for Jeremy. If students only work on the weekends, how does that affect engagement or interaction? Do you end up killing discussions since you wouldn't have any back and forth?
So I would say most of us work Monday to Friday, but we can't assume that the students do. For some students, their weekend is Wednesday to Thursday, or they have a Monday off and a Friday off. So we really can't assume that students have a specific time to work, but that they need a span of time to work. So when students have 2 deadline periods in a week, regardless of what their work schedule is or personal family schedule, that's what becomes challenging. And so it's having just one day where everything that week is due that makes things a bit easier. And then as far as discussions, I think discussions are the outlier. I haven't really heard many complaints about discussion boards as far as timing goes. The only complaints that I've heard on discussion boards is that instructions weren't clear enough. It's never really a timing thing for that. And I think, as we heard from our student panel earlier, discussions can be good. I mean, they can be hit or miss, but a lot of people like it because that's where online students get their engagement with their peers.
That's it from online for now.
Awesome. Thanks, Lori. So let me stick with the advisors for just a second. And, what are some of the common challenges students face in this sort of accelerated format?
So I'll speak just kind of on Fredonia's perspective for now. And I know I said it in my intro, but Fredonia's online grad students, they're all graduate students. So we don't have undergrads. So kind of my support that ends up being given to them and what challenges they may have are usually, they're just so busy. So they don't have time. They want to know just about the things that they need to know at that moment. So really the challenges might be related to, say, they are missing like college-wide deadlines. So one thing I just did was send them about the graduation application. So it was like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? Do I have to apply because I'm getting an educational leadership advanced certificate? But no, you do. That's still your program. So just kind of giving them that just-in-time support is what I've ended up doing. But challenges in my aspect, it's not a lot of like study skills. Mine are all master's students. So sometimes will, but mine is more so college-wide stuff.
So I'll let Kurt speak to the actual in-class student perspective, but I think my observations as somebody who helps those students is, again, like you said, quick turnaround. If a student has an issue and then I'm not able to get back to them for 1 or 2 days, let's say I take a vacation for a couple days or I have a sick day, well, then sometimes we've already passed a deadline. And so really quick turnaround is one thing that we've had to grapple with. And we work together as a team. Like we have success coaches that also help, and the in-person advising center can pick up the slack too. So it's just about connecting the students with those resources when those quick turnaround things come up, I think is my big thing.
That's a great point. And related, Kurt, what do you think, what sort of supports would be beneficial to you? to help you be successful?
I thought about this a little bit as the panel was discussing. I really don't have that much valuable information to provide you because I'm really getting an excellent level of support at Alfred. Between Jeremy, student services, the financial service areas, they've all been very responsive. My instructors as well. Usually I get a turnaround on an email within 12 to 24 hours. It's usually prompt and it's all the information that I need. And the support is there from academics to planning and looking at graduation requirements.
Kurt, I'll Venmo you your $50 later.
So I really can't complain about the support I'm getting. I mean, in all areas. I had a challenge with a paper I was writing because obviously was out of school for a very long time before coming back. And I wasn't really familiar with certain writing styles. I reached out to the campus writing center. They got back to me within 4 or 5 hours with some examples and some times where I could meet with them and have conversations for support. So I'm very happy with what I'm getting from Alfred.
Okay, that's awesome. That's great to hear. So looking at managing the courses, so how do you all, we have 2 examples of programs that are fully in this format. How do you sort of make the decision about which programs to put into this format?
So when we did it at Alfred, it was a really strategic decision that was made with the department chairs, the department's faculty, and our upper administration, right? We recognized that our traditional student body, which are traditional age students coming into very hands-on applied programs, needed that next step. And so many of our associates programs, when they graduated, they didn't want to stay. They wanted to go get their job. So we tried to build our degree completion, our bachelor level programs, so that they could be second 2-year programs that our students could either continue in, or that folks with 60 credits or an associate's degree could transfer into. And it was a very strategic decision on our part to have opportunities to partner with community colleges, to open ourselves up to accepting more folks who just have some college credit, and finding the right programs for them. So I think from a programmatic stance, that's kind of how we picked the programs. We also looked at which programs had high employability when they graduate, right? All of the things that I think we typically look for as colleges, but we really looked at which programs do we think that we had our own pipeline of students for, and then where could we partner with other institutions to kind of create those pipelines or continue keeping them going. And if I can, one of the things about Kurt's experience is baked into some of our program design. We have a dedicated team we actually have someone in the financial aid office who on Wednesdays works remotely, and her job that day is to respond to everything online. Not saying that she doesn't respond to online students on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday, but Wednesday is her dedicated day. And if she's setting up appointments, she has that time. So that's a college resource allocation that has been very specifically dedicated to online. And the same thing has been done at admissions. So for those of you who are administrators, right, looking to kind of implement these things, it is important that you look at those wraparound services, so that those students have access to folks and they can work around timing, right? Like Kurt said, he has a very intense schedule, but we don't Jeremy's the only one that has nighttime hours to help serve our students, but all the other offices have just normal working hours. But because they have that flexibility to hop on a call at noon or 12:30 when students are able to take a lunch break, that opens up some of that flexibility for them too.
Danielle, the financial and admission folks working remote, are they off campus?
On those days they are. So,
Those
I mean, our
days.
admission folks travel and they do all sorts of other
Okay.
things too. But yeah, the person, she's normally on campus 4 days a week, and then she has 1 day a week that she focuses on our online students.
So the programs that Fredonia has with this accelerated format right now is all in education. So it was built to accommodate those schedules, the K-12 schedules, and how they kind of rotate through busy and slow times as well. We have an MBA in accounting launching in the fall. And when we looked at that program, because they were, again, graduate students generally doing a professional job already, we looked at designing it with the accelerated program, and the faculty were very hesitant to move all of the courses to the 7 weeks. So we're going to have an interesting challenge this time with the program launching, because there are 2 courses in their program that are going to run 15 weeks. And this was based solely on the feedback from the faculty members who were designing the courses and the content that's in them. We'll see how the students react to that and what kind of feedback we get from most of their program running in that 7 week, and then these 2 courses running in the 15. And we'll get a lot of feedback from both the faculty teaching it and the students who are in it, and see where that falls, if they continue it that way or if we redesign those back down to a 7 week.
So sort of adding off of that, you said you started with education, now you're going to accounting. Are there specific areas you think you wouldn't try this with?
Maybe. Each time we've done this, the first meeting has been with the faculty members who teach the course, so that we can better understand what they're trying, what their goals are with the program. So we're doing some degree completion online programs Fredonia is preparing to launch, and they are undergraduate. And at this time, based on the faculty feedback, those are not intended to be 7 weeks. So again, it's still there's one in education, and they're saying no for those right now. For us, it hasn't been one thing that makes it okay or not okay. It is really about the people who are planning on teaching and building the courses and how they're feeling about the content and the goals of those individual courses.
Interesting. So what where they talk about the goals of what their courses, what sort of metrics do you use to determine if you are if the 7 week is successful, if you're meeting those goals that you laid out?
She said, metrics are always a challenge, right? Course completion is one of the metrics they look at. And they also look at the popularity of those 8 week courses. So SUNY Empire admits students 12 months a year, every single day, right? So we try to start students when they want to begin. And to the point that I think some of your faculty are raising, sometimes that's not always great, depending on the student. So we have a full student success coaching team that kind of helps students negotiate. Do you want to start right this second, or might it be better to wait until January, for example, right? Do you want to start in the middle of what does that mean? So helping students understand the accelerated, the rapidity, like they get sort of like that accelerated, sometimes they're not ready for it, but we don't want to dampen their enthusiasm either, right? So right now the metrics are course completion.
On that note, I want to say that we just ran some data ourselves on DFW rates for all online programs or all online courses. And from what I saw, I didn't see a statistically significant difference between full semester and half semester courses. And in fact, I think I saw more full semester courses that were higher up on the DFWs. There was only like 1 or 2 7-week courses that were high up on that list.
And if my department chair was here, she'd say, be careful who you ask to teach those courses, right? So that I'd like to think that the faculty presence, the faculty who choose to teach those courses, Danielle, I see you nodding, right? That must be a consideration, right? Who gets asked to do that?
I think the faculty. So this is one of those things that Degrees at Scale, my administrator hat, right, gave me some leverage for that. when we were in that partnership, one of the things that we were able to do was get a budget to do some master course builds, right? So we have courses that are in our online programs that were built with subject matter expert, instructional designer, very intentionally. And then those are the courses that our faculty are using to teach. So not every section, not every course, but many of them are still using versions of that, right? We've done some refreshes and things because we should. But Degrees at Scale gave us the budget to be able to do those kinds of things, and we've been able to sustain that budget. So having some of those kind of master courses or template courses, some institutions allow faculty to change up to a certain percentage. Having that consistency in the course, I think, is important, but also definitely faculty who buy into that kind of accelerated pace. And we do some onboarding with those faculty, right? So that they kind of understand. One of the first slides that we show them is who are our students and their profiles of students like Kurt and their data about that we get from our surveys about what other obligations our students have, right? So we really try to help our faculty be very aware of who the student population is that are in these specific programs.
One of the interesting outcomes of having the 7-week courses when finding faculty, we have a leadership program online, and we love to have current leaders out in the local school districts come in and teach those courses. It's super valuable for our students, but they were having a hard time committing to teaching a 15-week course when we could give them a 7-week course, and we do provide them with a master course schedule. They can give us 7 weeks, right? So we can have the head of HR from a large school district come in and teach that course for our students. He can give us 7 weeks. He would never agree to the full 15. So it does change the individuals that maybe are willing to work with you versus our regular faculty who are now joining in some of these programs, like our full-time tenure track. They're having a hard time wrapping their heads around teaching a class for 7 weeks and how that counts towards their workload, while they're also managing maybe a face-to-face 15 weeks. So that's something on our campus that is just now starting to be an actual thing, and having them talk about it and see how that's going to work for everybody, and perception on campus and things like that. But I think we've been able to hire some really excellent contingent faculty because we have this 7-week setup, and we're providing them with a master course, because many of them, like our friend from HR, he's great at what he does, but he's never written a syllabus or developed a course. He's really unsure about all of that. So we can provide him those pieces, and then he brings his expertise, which is amazing.
I have a question about how you select courses that get the acceleration. Dean wonders, what about gen ed and electives? Are those getting brought into this format too?
We're graduate only, so we don't have to, we're not managing gen ed for our programs.
And Danielle is saying, yes, they do the gen eds and elective courses in that same format.
Thank you. Can I do a couple more? Or you want to keep
Please.
going? Okay.
No, go ahead.
Given the short length of these courses, what degree of interaction among students is realistic? Discussions, pair, group assignments?
Kurt, I don't know if you have opinions on that.
Well, that's a good one.
Yeah, of course. So I regularly have interaction with other students in all of my courses through discussion groups once or twice a week, as well as some collaboration on some information regarding projects. The only difference between those interactions and ones that have day-to-day work is just in-person versus virtual. We do have the opportunity to use some of the software that Alfred provides us, like our Teams channel. In team utilization, we can use that for collaborational environments. Other than that, the interaction is just the same.
Great. Thank you.
Chris Price offers a deep thought. Is
Chris Price is known for his deep thoughts.
14 weeks too long?
Yeah,
nobody knows. And I think one other question I'd like to pull out here, someone mentioned that they look at the popularity of the courses. Can anyone speak to how the demand compares between a semester length version of a course versus the accelerated version?
So I think at Empire, there are courses that are required, right? Like, so I'm thinking about my department. I teach diversity in human services. It always fills. It fulfills diversity gen ed now. So we try to offer it both in 15 and in 8-week courses so that students can have a chance to take it, because if we're asking them to take it, we'd like to offer it, and we try to offer it over the summer, right? And so on and so forth. So the popularity of a course is certainly a key, but I would be remiss not to emphasize, if I didn't emphasize that these are not courses for the for just any old professor out there, right? You have the focus on teaching presence, the focus on announcements and managing time for the students in the course, reminding students that it's only an 8-week course. So it sounds obvious, but it's really not, right? Because time just sort of moves. I mean, we all experience time, right? And it moves along. So I will go into the course and say, and remember, we have a quiz, and also we have a quiz, and also there's a paper, and remember the paper. And I feel, when I first started, I thought I sounded, sort of, I was repeating myself, and maybe it was a little infantilizing. But then the feedback from the courses said, thank you, because students look at things at different times of the day and night, right? And so it's sort of that planned redundancy and planned repetition that I don't know what's just in time for a given student. So I just get in the course and repeat and repeat and repeat. And that seems to help in terms of course completion rates, even. Yeah.
And then for the second half of the semester, when that second 7-week course starts, making sure to pre-announce to them like 2 or 3 weeks leading up to it, because they forget that it's going to start, right? So it's all the things that's not on a regular schedule. So, right, Brianna does a lot of reminding about this is coming, this is coming, this is coming, right? Because you do kind of lose track of where you're at. Yeah.
I'll say, kind of to add to what Michelle said, but just again, from my point, student support, again, sometimes I feel like I'm repeating myself all the time, but they are super thankful because they are so busy. And like my students, especially if they're grad students, a lot of them, and they're ed. So a ton of them have a full-time or part-time job. If they're in ed leadership, they are likely a full-time teacher somewhere. So me sending them those reminder emails, they're always super thankful for it. And sometimes that's all I really get from them. They don't need much help with anything else, but they're like, oh, thank you for the reminder. And that is excellent.
Lots of agreement from online too. Someone wanted me to tell Michelle that that's the truth, Michelle. She's right.
Oh, I just wanted to check if there were any questions in the room that we wanted to address before I dove into more. Or deep thoughts, Chris. All right. Yes, Kim.
Can you hear me? So I think it was maybe Lisa who talked about decision at the faculty level, or starting at the faculty level to do this. And because we know that the implications of this are across the institution, right? Where and when is the conversation with institutional leadership about do this or not? What are the implications? How does this fit into the overall strategy? I would love it if you could, say a little bit about that. For folks who may be considering this or trying to think about this, what are some of those other implications, and where do those conversations happen?
Fredonia was slow to embrace online learning. So it was interesting that really I guess it was the second program. The second program they moved online, they launched right into an accelerated program, right? They went from not really doing much to doing this kind of special case. But I think in like looking back at it, it was probably because they felt like, well, this is a special thing and we're going to do it a special way, so it's going to be fine, right? But the feedback from the students was so positive that then when they started looking at other programs that they would consider to move online, and they really were mostly focused on graduate programs, the first question then became, does the program benefit from this? Because we have this great example, and the students seem to be reacting positively. They also liked, I think Empire Valley does a very exceptional rolling admissions, but Fredonia liked the idea at the graduate level of being able to accept a class more than once each year. So that was kind of a big deal for us to be able to start a cohort in the spring and in the fall. Maybe admissions and financial aid, and some of them weren't in love with that idea to start with, but right, everyone kind of figured it out. So I think it came down to creating more flexibility for the students and seeing the students react really positively to that idea. So I'm not sure it was intentional, but it really did. That initial success and that initial feedback really has guided where the next graduate programs will go. So it has worked out for us.
So I think what Alfred did 10 years ago for decision making is very different than what Alfred does now for decision making, right? We've had a lot of lived experience as an institution. We have a lot of faculty who are real, genuine champions for online. So we launched an emerging communications out of our English and Humanities that was just a face-to-face program. And when they were putting it through, I had said, hey, would you consider when it goes to state ed, just putting on the option to offer it online? You don't have to do it now, no pressure, but like, I have a feeling that in a couple of years, you might be interested in offering it online. And they were like, well, sure, like no commitment, right? So we're going to put it on, and state ed approved it, and great, now it's an option for us. And a couple of weeks ago, the chair of the department came up to me and said, hey, do you know how we have this emergent communications degree and you asked us to put that online as an option? Can we talk more about that now? So I think that, and yes, of course, right, is my answer. Absolutely. Let's talk about it. But I think that more of our programs are keeping the door open for that to be an option when they're getting new programs approved by state ed. I also tell them that it's way more paperwork if they want to do it after. So that probably incentivizes them a little bit. But I think that as a campus, we are seeing, especially since we're very remote, I mean, Fredonia is too, right? So we have to understand that the students who come to campus are there, and they're a special group of students, right? But if we want to provide education to a wider range of students, and if we want to be able to engage in some of these other activities that you all are doing around SUNY, then we have to be willing to do that, right? To be open to potentially offering other courses or other programs in the online format, and then working on those partnerships between institutions. So I think from a decision-making perspective now, the campus we try as much as possible to bake that into our early on conversations about programs. And that may not have happened that way 10 years ago, right? And some campuses might be where Alfred was 10 years ago, and that's okay. But starting to take steps to have some of those conversations and get it into your program development process, right? Would we ever consider maybe offering this as online? And if the department says, well, we're not committing to it, but maybe, right? Then maybe that's something that you want to kind of put on your program proposals. Maybe I wasn't supposed to say that. Kim's going to yell at me now.
No. So just my follow-up question is, is that the same process or place where decisions about offering a program in an accelerated format happens? Is that the same?
Right. For us, yes, because we're really looking at that non-traditional population. That's our target, right? And we have, as a college, very clearly stated that we are we're not intentionally marketing to 18, 19, 20-year-olds, right? We are very intentionally marketing to folks who are in that 30, 40, 50 range, the career changers, the people who are looking for promotions. So I think it's a decision that has been made on our campus, and that's strategic.
Thank you. So bring this back for a second to online and technology enhanced learning. What role does the technology play in enhancing the learning experience in these sort of courses?
So the faculty have to be really good at it because there's not as much room for like an error. We have to be really ready to answer, right? It goes back to the same response that we were giving about your student questions. They have to be answered immediately. So our training to the faculty has to be really good. The faculty have to feel really confident in what they're doing because there's not as much time to make corrections, right? I'm not sure we have chosen any special technology because we're doing a 7-week course. Right, we're still using the same tools.
No, same, but the flexibility of the faculty. So if I'm teaching an 8-week course and a student has a difficult time the first 10 days of the course, which can happen, as a faculty member, I have to suspend all my little faculty ideas about what deadlines might look like in that space, right? Like I really have to, for those of you that read Pedagogy Oppressed, like I really have to walk that walk and say, it's literally okay for this to sort of take a different path with a bunch of students or a few students and just be okay with that because the good, I think, the good piece about these 8-week courses is that it ensures or informs some kind of momentum, right? And students often, when they come to Empire, and I'm sure in other programs, want to, right? They make up their mind, they want to go back to school, and they want the modality and the pace of the courses to fit where they are in terms of their own energy and pace. So, which is great. And then we have to be ready for things to go wrong, right? And then and to be kind of okay with that and be flexible with students if they can't figure out how to upload a paper to Brightspace, like that happens. And and be okay with that.
Do you think that the faculty who teach time shortened into courses are also good candidates to teach those courses as part of a regular program?
I think many of our faculty do both. Yeah, Michelle's saying she does both. So I think they tend to favorite one after a while. They have a preference, but I can't think of anyone on our campus that couldn't or wouldn't do either lengths.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off that actually. What kind of specialized training would you recommend for faculty like this? So maybe, maybe the general online learning training doesn't suffice here. I mean, we have specialized teaching modalities like HighFlex that we have specialized, training for. This is far more prevalent than HighFlex for us. And I'm thinking that there should be probably some kind of training. What do you guys recommend or think about that?
I think for us, it is centered around that idea of RSI, because as Michelle was saying earlier, it's more intense, right? Because you're answering so much more and going through so much more material. So, for someone who is both new to teaching online and they're going to be teaching in the accelerated 7-week, really focusing on with them what that means, what RSI means, what that looks like, what their expectations are. And then in our case, when you throw into the mix someone who has never taught anything before because they're an expert in HR, they really need a lot of support in getting to that point where the students are feeling like they're getting their feedback and getting the support that they intended. So generally for all of our online faculty, I think that RSI training is probably really important, but I think for these faculty to understand the rate at which it's going to happen probably needs to be done more.
Yeah, and I guess, Kurt, I'll ask you after I answer, I'll give you a second to think about it. What do you wish that your faculty knew, right, about you or about students like you? But I think the one thing that surprises our faculty the most is that demographic information that we share with them, right? Like who are our students and what are they doing in their daily lives? Because I think as faculty, we sometimes just have this assumption that my course is the only thing that you're worried about every day, all day, right? And well, our faculty know that that's not the case of our students. That's our dream world, right? So sometimes helping them to understand, especially our contingent faculty who may not really have a good sense of who our students are, right? They might have taught other places, they might have taught a face-to-face course before, but it is that, like, what are the expectations of an online course, and then who are those actual students who are in it? But yeah, Kurt, what would you want faculty to know?
I think you bring up some good points, and getting to know who we are and that demographic is key. I know there's a lot of students within inside the courses I take or are in similar situations as I am. Really working full time, sometimes 15, 16 hours a day, but we have other responsibilities and commitments that we have to take care of outside of a normal working day. That's why we chose online learning in some of these accelerated courses, because it gives us the flexibility to do the work when we have time, not as a dedicated time per day. I think some of the instructors or faculty try to do that with kind of some of their introductory discussion posts where they ask a little bit about you, right? They want to get to know who you are in taking that course. I'm hoping that they take some of that information and read those posts to really understand the people that are engaged in that coursework. From my personal experience, I've had some challenges with a couple different courses, and I've emailed my professors, and they were very understanding and gave me some leeway on some assignments due to things that popped up within inside of my work life situation. So having that flexibility, understanding who we are, is important to helping us feel like we're more supported to complete the coursework.
So, where are the pockets of resistance and pushback? And is it the same resistance and pushback you get to online in general, or is it different somehow? And or how are you dealing with that where you get it? That was from Michelle, because I know she has opinions on that.
I know. You deep thinker. So it occurred to me that I feel like we're sort of talking about maybe minimally 3 different things, right? It's the resistance to online. It's the who teaches the accelerated courses online, and then what do we know about the students that take those courses, right? So I'm thinking about, I used to teach at UAlbany in a first-year experience program, and a lot of what I did in that program, yes, there was content, of course, but it was kind of like, how do you get 18-year-olds to, maybe not be 18 so much, or let them be 18 now so they don't do it when they're 50, right? Like that kind of thing. So when I started teaching at SUNY Empire, I learned very quickly, and I'm curious about what you all think, that when a student emails me and says, my kid is sick, their kid is sick. It has nothing to do with my deadline or my agenda or my whatever, right? I just had to stop with this sort of developmental, this is a part of what it means to be at college, which is not to say we don't hold students, right? But there are other, so I think that that's a piece of it, Chris. I think there's like a suspending of maybe how how many of the people in this room learned. And it's almost like an academic hazing. Like, I had to do it, so you have to do it too. And why? Why is that, right? Now we're in a power struggle now that, right? So I think there are ways to maintain academic standards and completion rates, right, and all of that, and still have some flexibility with the approach, and also still be willing to say, this is due, this is due, this is due, remind you, remind you, remind you. I think I have maybe some faculty across the globe would say, well, it's not my job to remind you of that. And I'm like, but why not? Why wouldn't it be my job to help you understand that, right? We have success coaches who help. Why wouldn't I do that as well? So it's that. But, yeah.
No, I would agree. I think once someone is taught online, I don't think they necessarily push back on the 7-week thing. But you're right. I think if they don't like online, they're really going to hate 7-week, right? Because they're just going to come up with all these other things that are wrong with it. And if you're a faculty member who isn't willing, right? If the answer is always just check your syllabus, maybe 7 weeks isn't like the place for you. But sometimes it takes them trying it once to realize that they are capable, right? So we have guided some people through who were surprised at the end that it did work the way they wanted. Yeah. But there's always haters, right? It's what we do for a living.
If I can make a deduction, I also think that some of the resistance to the accelerated format is sort of because of a lack of preparation. I think sometimes faculty will get some feedback about their course, and I can just picture them internally groaning and going, oh, now I have to change the whole thing. And nobody wants to do that. So I think proper preparation would prevent that from being an issue in the first place.
So we have about 4 minutes left. I think any last questions that either online or in the room that people wanted to talk about?
We look good online.
All right, excellent.
Of course, Danielle has the last comment. What I would say is for those of you who are like, I want to do this, or I want to have this conversation with my faculty, or I want to start thinking about having the conversation, right? Maybe you know that some people on your campus aren't ready. Find someone on your campus and take them to coffee or tea or whatever they drink, right? Because I found that the easiest way to start some of these conversations is by building that relationship. And sometimes it's with your most resistant faculty, the people who you know are going to question the why. Because if I can convince them, or we can have a good conversation about it, then that prepares me better for answering all the other questions. So for people who are like, these people are just crazy, there's no way I'm ever going to get that on my campus, right? Go sit down, have a cup of coffee. And then after that, feel free to reach out to any of us because we're willing to chat more.
That's right. So I think that's just about it, Alex.
Thank you. What a delightful panel.
Yes, thank you very much, and especially thank you, Kurt, for giving up your time to give us your insight today. Very appreciated.